First of all, every wine in the world has sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is a natural byproduct of fermentation. So let's get that really clear. So when they say our wine is totally sulfur dioxide free, the only way they can do that is to add some hydrogen peroxide to neutralise it. Now when you add hydrogen peroxide, well, you know what hydrogen peroxide does. It's effectively a bleaching agent. Now I don't think there's too many winemakers who want to oxidise their wines. They've got so many other ways to oxidise their wine. So they're not going to get a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and do that. So that's the first point. Generally the levels are very low and they usually get bound up and, you know, they don't sort of play a big role. Now I do add sulfur dioxide in my wine. So in Australia, under the Biological Farmers of Australia, you're only allowed to add total no more than 100 parts per million. So there's a legal level as to the level of what you can add. And we tend to stick to that. Generally, our whites are higher than our reds for very obvious reasons. Our whites are around about 40 to 50 parts. Our reds are. Our whites are much higher, around about 80. Because we don't put our wines through malolactic fermentation. But the other thing to understand is that poor old sulfur dioxide gets blamed for all the problems when we consume wine. Now, I've done plenty of experiments with people, for example, who have said they're allergic to sulfur dioxide. Now, I don't suggest you do that. I can do that because I've got a medical background. So what I do is I say, no problem, come in here and let's see if you're allergic to sulfur dioxide. So what I do is I go to the back vat and I'll grab a barrel that I haven't sulfured the wine at all. And I'll get a sample of that wine and I'll put it in front of them. Then I'll get a couple of drops of sulfur dioxide in a litre of the wine. I'll leave it there and I'll put the two glasses in front of them. And what I do is I say to them, now they're organic wines, they're totally chemical free. The only difference is one has sulfur dioxide and one doesn't. But neither of those wines have any of the fungicides, herbicides and all the chemicals that also are in the bowl that you don't have to put on your label because you don't have to by law. Because it's not an ingredient of wine. When you're adding fungicides, it's an ingredient to the grapes. So you don't have to declare that. So what I do is I put them in front of them, and generally a reaction of sulfur dioxide is generally redness in the face, as usual, or mucus build up in the nose. So what I do is I get them to drink both, and I tell them one of them has sulfur dioxide, but I don't tell them which one. And I say, drink them both, and let's see if you get a reaction. And generally what happens is if they're going to get a reaction to that wine with sulfur dioxide, then you can say categorically they can either drink red wine or they're allergic to sulfur dioxide. But if they don't get a reaction to neither, then we know that they're not allergic to sulfur dioxide and they can drink red wine. I've brought plenty of people back to red wine, but they drink organically certified red wine that's chemical free of all the other things. So just, you know, this issue about sulfur dioxide is, I think, overplugged so hard to the point where a lot of companies use it as a marketing tool to sell preservative-free wine. Now, those companies that sell preservative-free wine still use the fungicides and herbicides in their wine. They're not organically certified, they're just preservative-free. And to me, that is a lot of nonsense. So I want to really clarify that issue about sulfur dioxide. So you may be allergic to it, maybe, but it's not as common as what people claim that for the critter.
Just an observation, you know, just back on the marketing side. This is something consumers have to do on their own, because you know you've got to seek out the biodynamic producers. You know, that's what it's all about. You know, they're not going to display it on their label, and some don't even talk about it. You know, it's not. And that question of, you know, does a biodynamic wine taste better? Absolutely, because if some guy's gone to that trouble, you think about all what these guys have said. If someone goes to that much trouble tilling the soil, hell, he's going to be pretty careful about what comes out the other end. To me, it's just so logical. Why would you go to all that trouble and all the process and looking after the land and all the thought process and the intellectual, you know, ingredients into that they would want to produce ordinary wine? I mean, that's like looking both ways across the road.
And by the way, sulfur dioxide has been used since the Roman times. They used it as a sterile preserving agent to burn sulfur, and it's a tradition that's gone really right up, still used today. So, yeah, I don't see a big deal. If there is a safe preservative used, let me assure you, sulfur dioxide is much safer than the benzoates that they use in lemonade and Coca-Cola. They are known carcinogens. Sulfur dioxide has not been proved to be carcinogen, but I can tell you sodium benzoate has been been proven to be carcinogen in certain levels. And that's used in great gold soft drinks all over the world.
So as a bit of a diversity, Ted has just joined us, Ted Lemon from the Torre.
He was here all the time.
He was.
He just
didn't. It wasn't. Yeah.
Spooky.
The reason these are old hand-picked guys, they're not only just great practitioners, they're certifiably a little bit crazy. We've covered different parts of the planet. You know, this is all about different parts of the planet, right? So Ted's in Sonama, up in the extreme Sonama. He might tell us just a little bit about that, because it's a unique place. Sergio Carle, he's from Victoria, Australia. He has vineyards in Yarra Valley and Heathcote. He has the best, I think he has the best experiment of how biodynamic wine can come, you know, that you can actually see it. And also in terroir, he has a cuvee, he has a Heathcote, two wines, one's north and one's south. And so you can buy the two wines and look, it's great. It shows you the difference. Pascal Marchand, well, he was talking biodynamics before they could spell it in Burgundy. He's the pioneer of this stuff, but a quiet pioneer, and in the sense not making a big deal of it, but he's one of the true pioneers. And Nigel Greening from Felton Road is, he's seen as the leading sort of practitioner in New Zealand.
Oh, no, James. You have to give that to James.
Right,
James Milton, James Henry Milton are some of the first farmers, great farmers in the world.
I think he started even before me.
Yeah, he's way back. James is a...
indeed. But, Nigel is probably one of the great examples of that not everything was being done that way at Felton Road when he acquired it. I mean, it was,
I know, it's chemistry farm.
Yeah, and so I think it's a great, or a very transparent test case. You see the transformation of a wine, of a property, from being, not organic to organic.
I think there's one other quick point I wanted to throw in here. You put a lovely picture up of Atarangi.
Yes.
Now, Atarangi aren't biodynamic producers. They aren't certified organic producers. But I'm going to go back here to something that Dominique Lefant said to me a few years ago. Dominique's passionate excellence of biodynamics in Burgundy. And he talks about, it's all about your, this thing I started with, it's about your relationship with your land, and the way you emotionally engage with your land. And the guys at Atarangi, forget certification and the rest of it, they're fully engaged. By any of Dominique's standards, these are people he would say they have a spiritual relationship with the land. And that's more important than preparations. It's more important than any of it. That's the fundament. And so, guys like this would get my vote. They would never turn around and say, oh yes, we're biodynamic producers. But they have that same emotional relationship to their land that all of us do.
Any questions on wine or stuff?
Biodynamic farming, is it kind of scalable? I mean, because I see lots of it in Burgundy areas, but could we farm large tracts of land with
India.
India?
Yeah, look at there are huge projects in India. Peter Proctor's programs in India, just amazing.
Tell us more.
I don't know much about them, but he's done huge projects, converting whole swathes of agriculture in India to biodynamics.
They've had different leaders in different parts of the world. Alex Podolinsky, actually, I think he may have, did he meet Steiner when he was a little kid?
No idea.
I think, Podolinsky's about 90 years old at the moment. So, no, he'd have been too young. but he grew up in the same area. He came from, was it the Ukraine or something? But Podolinsky came out in the 50s with another guy, a Swedish guy, who had actually listened to Steiner's lectures, and there was a guy by the name of Robert Williams, and these guys came to Australia, and there was a big biodynamic movement in Australia around the wartime, so 40s and 50s. So, and biodynamics was really done. Peter Proctor was a protege of Alex Podolinsky, and then he moved to New Zealand and really pushed the biodynamic thing there, and then went over to India. And to answer your question, in large scale, there was a lot of large-scale farming in wheat, biodynamics, and it was an amazing commodity to trade because with the Demeter logo, which is the goddess of agriculture, that was a huge marketing tool to actually have your wine certified under the Demeter logo because there was a huge network around the world that understood that. So there was quite a bit of large-scale farming to that area, but India's really going at a zillion miles an hour. But biodynamics has grown at a very rapid rate in a lot of places in the world. In Australia, there's more and more farms getting certified biodynamic. It's really an expanding business.
I think the question of the nature of scalability, it's a tough issue because obviously if you have 20,000 hectares somewhere in the Australian outback, you can't apply the preparations and do that work in the same manner that you can at the scale everybody here is functioning at. But I think that life is compromise, and I think there was nothing that Steiner ever wrote that thought that we were in some sort of ivory tower. And so this was the longest answer in the agriculture course to one of the questions. If you look at the agriculture course, is the answer to the question about using tractors. Someone says, are we allowed to use machines? And Steiner spends more time answering that single question than any other question about preparations or anything else. And the reason he spent so much time on it was he wanted to make sure that people remained in the realm of practicality, your farmers. So whether you're doing 50,000 hectares or 5, there's compromises in life, but that doesn't mean it can't be tried. Absolutely.
But I did hear of farms where they do aerial spraying of 5 but actually using planes for these mass scale areas. See, what we always going to understand is when you apply these fibres, you've got to stir, you've got to prepare. Within an hour, you've got to have a broadcast. You've only got certain times to spray these preparations. So there's that practicality parameter which you can do it in. So machines, in a sense, can help do broad acre, but there is a limitation. There's a serious limitation to how far you can go. So you're better off having a bunch of smaller farms than one big massive farm. That's probably a good thing. Get more people back on the land where they should be.
But that's still scale.
Yeah. More questions? On wines, perhaps?
Yeah, any thoughts on the wines?
Yeah, exactly, because the subject gets a bit intense. What we're actually here for.
It's a wine.
You're not trying the wine versus a non...
Yeah,